G'day friends, I've been really obsessed with roads lately and today is no exception. We're going to dive a little deeper into all the roads that are stretching around our developing city and keeping it all small in terms of the roads, in terms of the streets, in terms of the buildings. I'm doing this new thing where I am trying to keep everything very little. I don't want any large roads, no stroads, no highways, not even large buildings. All of these are just gonna have to fit when the little guys are down. All these roads that would have just been horse and cart, people walking around, some small vehicles, and then they grow and develop as the city develops, they're just gonna have to fit. And also the plan is to not make things perfect, make things feel realistic and make things not work, because eventually when everything doesn't work, then we're gonna have to fix it all up, and I'm all for that. We'll upgrade, make things bigger, make things make a little bit more sense. But that's for later. Welcome back to New Dollarton. We're going to kick off the episode a little bit differently. You're going to be watching a bunch of pre-recorded footage because I wanted to get a lot of work done in terms of the road layout and just expanding out the place and just figuring out where things are going to go. But then I also wanted to talk to you guys. I wanted to use this opportunity just to have a little chat and figure out a couple of things to do with this series. If you wanted to skip ahead to a moment where I am talking about what I'm doing on screen, I'll leave a timestamp down below, and there will be a live play a little later in this video, again, a timestamp. For this first part, I'm going to be putting more effort into the way these growables look. I was really just zoning them up just to get them down, but now I wanted to make sure they were facing a direction that I felt like was more realistic. You do usually find these sort of places, they will all be facing a similar road, and they will also be the same lot size, so I was just trying to make sure that was happening. As you can see, it's a bit of a hassle with the way that the buildings kind of get attached to a road, so yeah, had to put a bit of effort into this, but I do think the payoff is definitely worth it. And then after this, we're just going to be expanding. So that's what we're going to be doing while I'm going to be chatting to you guys. So what I wanted to talk about was, I want to know, do we start introducing mods into this series? Now, as you all know, the Paradox mods is not ready yet. We don't have access to that. So any mods that I would be using would be through the Thunderstore. This is not an official place for mods. So I am a little hesitant. I mean, number one, I am hesitant to use them because I don't want anything to happen to this map. I don't want anything to happen to this save. I want to play it pretty safe. So that's my question to you guys. Do we start introducing some? And if so, do you have an experience using some of these mods? Are they easy to use? Which ones should I actually grab? And whether or not it's worth the time and worth the risk. I think it's pretty safe from what I've noticed, but I am still a little hesitant. And in saying that, there's only a handful of mods that I'm actually interested in using, and two of them go hand in hand, and for a pretty similar reason. The first one that I'm thinking about getting is pretty low risk. I think this one will be pretty safe to use, but it's I actually can't remember the name of it, but it does allow you to change the color of the game, pretty much using the same settings within the camera settings, and then I can make it so it's permanent, so it pretty much acts like an LUT, which I think is great because I wouldn't mind the game looking a little brighter and a little bit more saturated. And I also think the ability just to change the sun direction would be really useful when playing the game because I think that actually makes a really big difference in the way that your city looks. And then the other two mods I have real questions about, and I guess this is where I would really like your opinions. One of them is Anarchy, and I solely want Anarchy for a very lightweight reason. I want it so that I can place trees more freely. Because I actually think that the lack of trees within these cities are really letting down the way that they look. I think that they look super concretey and very plain and very dull because there's no green spaces. And I'm not just talking about making parks and making green spaces that are a little bit more open. I mean placing trees between buildings and placing them along the side of roads because, you know, you don't just have like massive wide spaces for trees to grow. You know, trees kind of just grow wherever. And quite often you'll have historical trees, these trees that have been there for hundreds of years. You know, these trees have kind of watched all these different stages of the city's development, and in that regard, I also like the mechanic that does take a while for trees to grow. I'm going to talk a bit more about that in a minute as well, but, you know, in saying all of this, I just feel like we're really lacking the ability to place or even just have more green spaces, more trees being grown more freely within the city. And the thing is, I do understand the lack of tree anarchy when it comes to the base game, but I also feel like we just need a couple of extra trees growing on these lots, and then even roads that just have no green grass on the other side, you know, because I actually do like the street parking, but then I don't want to have streets that just have 0 trees on them, because pretty much most streets have trees that are growing alongside. And to be honest, and I'm going to regret saying this, but I don't think I want anything to do with road anarchy or prop anarchy. I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment, but I don't think I want it. And then the other mod that I am thinking about getting is, I believe there is a mod that removes the tree growing animation. Yeah, I know, I did just say that, and I did also say that I don't mind the fact that trees do take a while to grow. I'm like stuck. I'm really stuck with this mechanic, because in some cases I want them to take a while because I like seeing them grow over time, but then in some other cases I want to create forests or just see how a tree is going to look at its final stage, you know? I'm very split between this, but I think I do want that mod. What do you guys reckon about all that? And then just to talk a little bit more about the game and mods in general, talk about prop anarchy and all the mods that we're going to be seeing down the track, because no doubt this is going to get super fleshed out with mods. I am so fine with the way that the game is running at the moment, to be honest. Like, playing around with the roads and having not much access to detailing, you know, because at the moment we do have a couple of mods coming out that do give you the ability to dive into dev mode and do some detailing, but to be honest, I'm not really interested, because I also love playing around with roads and layout, and that's something that was always very limiting to me when playing City Skylines 1, because I would always get so bogged down with the way that roads looked. You know, I'd start working on a road and just try to make it look a certain way and, you know, create all these crazy layouts, but then the intersections and the traffic AI would just be so all over the place that it really limited the amount of city I could build, because I was getting so bogged down with having to detail up an intersection. And we always had such great mods that came out, like Intersection Marking Tool was such a game changer when it came out, and still saves so much time, you know, really shaved off a whole lot of time that we used to spend just, you know, dragging out decals and, you know, trying to align everything up. It was just crazy. But with this game, now we have the ability just to kind of connect up roads and streets, and they just turn into beautiful intersections. Not perfect, absolutely not perfect, but to be honest, for me, good enough. Like, that is exactly what I want. And I am really liking the fact that we can just, you know, I can actually just spend a whole lot of time figuring out the road layout and the layout of the city, which is something that I'm also really interested in. I love road patterns and just seeing how and thinking about how cities have changed over time, and, you know, how different suburbs look different to one another, and figuring out why they look that way. And as you can probably tell, I've already expanded out the city quite a lot. I've got a good idea of where things are going and the direction of the layout. And I absolutely love the idea that by the time I have a good established city and a good idea where things are, and we've, you know, implemented all the things within the current version of City Skylines 2, then probably Paradox Mods is going to be out, and I'll be able to add in all those juicy assets and mods that start to get introduced, and we can go back and start detailing places up and make all those changes, but then the roads would just pretty much stay the same unless we just make some minor changes. And to be honest, that's the direction I was heading towards within City Skylines 1, just laying out the city and zoning up places, and then getting into the detail work a little later on in the series. So it's kind of just working out that way as well. Now, of course, there are things that I wish were still more present within City Skylines 2, and of course when, you know, mods get introduced like Move It and Traffic Manager and Find It, and all those mods and assets that we never even dreamed of, that just start to get introduced and using the mechanics that we have. By the way, I would be so interested to hear your dream mods at the moment. Like, what are you thinking would be such a great mod to be introduced? Something that we haven't seen before, because I've already got a whole bunch that I could absolutely ramble about. Maybe I'll make a video about that eventually, but just so excited about the roads and the layout of the city and figuring out where things are going to be positioned and placed and expanded upon, and there are still things that I haven't even dived into yet. So many things. But hey, check out these roads. I am really loving the way that some of these neighborhoods are starting to get fleshed out. I think things are starting to look a whole lot nicer down here, especially with these autumn trees. But anyway, let's flesh out a couple more suburbs, and this time I will actually talk about them. You might notice that the road layout up here is all over the place. I say up here because this is up on a plateau just above New Dimesburg. I'm not going to call this, I guess this will still technically be part of the city, but I will also like it to have its own identity. And as part of that, it also has its very own road layout that is very much influenced by the contours of the land and maybe something else. Maybe the rail infrastructure is going to play a bit of an impact on this, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see about that. Of course, similar to the old New Dollarton, this is all inspired by the neighborhoods and places up above Jersey City, which are doing a pretty similar thing in terms of the grid layout. It's all over the place, there's some tricky intersections, and I love it. It's very similar to Sydney, which is also all over the place, and I also love it, except for when I'm trying to drive it. But it's very interesting, and I think it makes for something that's quite different to what New Dimesburg is like, and I'm all for that. I love creating these places so that they do feel very unique from one another, and that when we do zoom out and have a good look, and even if we're up nice and close, you can get a good sense of the differences in the places that we are creating, and I think this just adds to it, but I would also like to know, why is it like this in real life? Why is it like this up above on top of Jersey City? Because it is pretty different to anywhere else, and there must be a good reason. Maybe it's the topography, I don't really know, but it's pretty cool. In terms of zoning, I'm keeping it just so simple. I'm just zoning it up, and we'll come back to it at another date. But this is one of the places that I am also quite happy with leaving single family housing, because I think it does kind of suit it. But eventually, when we start expanding out a little bit more, we will be turning this into more of a inner city suburb, because it would be kind of cool to see some more row houses around here. But hey, that's about it for this pre-recorded footage. We hit the Tiny Town milestone, we've unlocked a couple of extra things. Let's dive into it. Yes, mixed zoning. How bloody lovely. I've been hanging out for this because our city is going to be made up mostly of mixed zoning when it comes to commercial districts. The low density just is not cutting it. It's been very temporary. It looks a little bit odd amongst all these much taller apartment buildings, and it's going to be a dense place. So having a whole bunch of low density commercial areas is just not cutting it. Yes, maybe scattered around and definitely reserved for some smaller places, but in the heart of the city, no thank you. Now, unfortunately though, our city has zero demand for anything high density, because our city currently is made up of a bunch of dummies. And that is a bit of a problem, because mostly students want to live in the high density places, so that's a problem. That's okay though, because it's only episode 2 and I wanted to get my roads down first. And unfortunately, that also goes for any of the other services. We don't really have anything in terms of police. We have one measly little healthcare service, and we have a crematorium, and that's pretty much it. One park, and that's it. We got nothing else. No power station, nothing in terms of water. It's just a real lackluster, nothing going on type of place. But the roads, they have been the most important part so far, and I still want to work on them. There's still a couple extra things I want to do before I start placing down any of these larger buildings. And I am, for the most part, really liking the direction of a lot of these roads and boulevards and these main streets that are directing traffic around our city. As you can see, you can get a good sense of the direction of some of these and the way that they are going. I think they're making sense, and I'd actually would like to go through and start naming some up in a more realistic sense. And I think my favorite one at the moment is Briarwood Street, because it's kind of following a similar path to John F. Kennedy Boulevard, which is, again, a really cool road, which is kind of directing a lot of traffic around this area, and you can kind of see the path that it takes as it stretches throughout these suburbs, and I really like it. We'll continue to take inspiration from this boulevard. You know what? Let's just call this Briarwood Boulevard. Yeah, Briarwood Boulevard. And just having a look at its path, I think it mostly makes sense. I think this is probably one of the better defined ones, but I actually think it's probably in the best location. Obviously, it's a bit wonky and a bit all over the place in areas, and it's going to get pretty chockers when we start, you know, making these places a little bit more high density. But I do like the way that it kind of interacts with its, you know, with the rest of the surroundings, and it has a real purpose. You know, I can see that this is going to get quite a lot of traffic throughout its lifetime, and we're going to definitely have to upgrade it as we go. And you can kind of see whereabouts it's heading. I think it's going to probably make a bit of a diagonal angle up here, and maybe even go like out that way. You know, it's going to go on for quite a while. So that's that direction. But then when it comes to down here, I've got a couple of, yeah, I think I might just change it up a little bit. So at the moment, it kind of goes down here and then just terminates. But I actually think I would like it to potentially go over to this island. So maybe instead of going down here, can we make it go along here instead? If I upgrade it. Okay, it's its own street. What about if I went like this? Oh, there it is. I did it. But then if I connect this back up, will it change? What happens? Beautiful. You know, it's pretty nice and centered. It's going to be connecting up quite a lot of communities and neighborhoods and even a couple of cities along its journey. I like it. I think that one's pretty straightforward, even though it's pretty wonky and not straightforward. You know what I mean. We've also got this one down here. This one is Hillside Street. I think it would probably continue to be Hillside Street if this wasn't a freeway, or a highway, so that's fine. I think instead, I'm gonna leave it to you guys. What should we call this one? And I reckon it's gonna, you know, go all along here. I think at some point, I'm probably gonna turn this not into a highway, and we'll actually make another highway that stretches around here. So if you've got a name idea, please let me know for that one. So we've got Fairview Street, which I actually kind of like the name of. I think we might keep it. However, this one just kind of stops around here. Now, I could continue it and connect it up into these areas, but I do like that this is a bit of a dead end right there, but not for this street. I feel like this needs to be a little bit more substantial, and I actually think it needs to go all the way through here. You know, we've got this road that is stretching all the way through the heart and center of New Dimesburg. Pearl Street, oh, that's also quite a nice name. So I actually think that I would like this to connect up to this one, and this to be the road that stretches all the way through. You know, that makes a little bit more sense. Alright, I'm struggling with this little section down here because I really like the fact that our grid is just kind of doing something a little bit different in this section. It kind of just really shows that there is a difference between New Dimesburg and then whatever we end up building here, because I do feel like this is going to be a different place. It's kind of doing its own thing, and therefore I like the fact that we do have a grid that is kind of just breaking it up a little bit. However, because there's not a huge amount of space, I think that this road, Pearl Street, is just kind of making things a little bit more problematic. It's just making it a little bit too complicated. So what I'm going to do instead is I've just saved it just in case we mess things up, which I'm sure we are. I'm going to put it on pause, and I'm going to remove this street because I don't know if we truly need it. And then our main road could do something like that, and then do a little bit of a sweep and turn so that it does connect up into this little road. Yeah, it's a little bit different, but I don't mind it. I think it's... Oh, Adam. No, that's not gonna work. All right, I've got a plan, but it does mean that I have to kind of spoil something for you all. But I think that this is probably as good a time as ever to just change where this road sits, rather than being on that side of the bridge. You can instead go through that section. And in fact, I'm going to make him pretty diagonal for this little section until he meets this road, like that. We'll connect him up, and then he can shoot on down like that. Wonderful. And honestly, at this stage, I'm not quite sure if I'm going to connect up this road. You know what? Stuff it. Let's just do it for now. I'm just going to do it. But I do like that now this road is kind of making its journey all the way through here. And we'll have to make sure that it's all the same name so that it is, all part of the same road. But what I was saying before is I'm going to keep this bit open because this is most probably where the train line's going to be going through. But yeah, don't tell anyone. So I've just zoned up this section with some single family housing, which I don't love. I mean, I would like this to be more row houses and a little higher density, but for now it's fine. We do have the demand for single family housing, so we're just going to continue to zone areas like this up like that because the main focus is roads and layout and just getting a good sense of where things are going to sit. And then we'll start really fleshing out the city into more of a city. At the moment, it's still a little bit all over the place, but I am really happy with this road. It is now just renamed itself to King Street, which I have to admit, kind of love it. So I think I might keep it like that. Though I don't know if you can call this a street because it is a bit of a stretch, which is just so fun. Actually, we need to change that. But I mean, just like have a look at this. This is going to be such a massive road that is going to stretch all the way through so many different sections of our city. And it's actually going to be going over the bridge over to Staten Island. Haha, just joking. It's Staten Island. I don't know why I keep on calling it Staten Island. But we're going to, do need to change it. I don't really want King Street to just go off over there. We're going to change it so that King Street instead goes this way. Like that. Florence. Actually, now I like Florence. All right, fine. I'm going to call it Florence Boulevard? Maybe? Florence Avenue, Florence something. But now it's Florence. City Skylines 2, you just generate some really nice street names. But I'm actually starting to feel really happy with all these roads stretching around our city. I think they're making a lot of sense. I do want to work a little bit more on Briarwood Boulevard because I do feel like it's a bit short-lived. I mean, it does go for a pretty good stretch, but I don't know. I kind of feel like I need to justify it being called a boulevard. No, it's fine. I don't know. I just kind of want to stretch out a little bit further, but I probably need to wrap it up at some point. And at some point, which is right now, I need to educate these poor buggers because we're going to run into some serious problems if we don't put down some education. And plus, I think we're ready. Actually, we're way overdue. So now that we've got the roads, now that we've got a good idea of the streets, I can start placing down some of these larger buildings. Education, and let's start with an elementary school. We call them primary schools in Australia. Now, the problem with placing down all the roads first is we're just not going to have any room to place this bad boy down because it's a pretty big building. A lot of these service buildings are absolutely massive, and I don't want to just place it over here just because we've got space for it. I actually want to try and wedge it in somewhere. Do want to place it pretty heart and center, but not really in downtown New Dimesburg because I kind of want to leave this more reserved for other places like skyscrapers and office blocks. And, I think if there's going to be some sort of elementary school down here, this would probably be a more inner city type of place. Whereas this is a little bit more kind of suited for an area like this. So if that's the case, where on earth would we place it? And I'm also trying to find places that are a little bit messed up with the road layout. So I'm kind of leaning towards Walnut Street. Maybe even somewhere like this because I can remove a couple of these roads. This is a boulevard, this is going to be a very busy road at some point, at least that's what I'm kind of aiming for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that road right there. And I still don't think I'm going to have enough room. So I'm actually going to just change this into a little alleyway and we'll see if we've got enough room now. Just not enough. So I'll turn off snapping and I reckon I can just shift this a little bit further. Something that I honestly don't love with City Skylines 2 is I don't love these very sharp edges on some of these buildings. I feel like it would be really lovely if it kind of just like filled the gap between some of these spaces. Now we've kind of got this weird triangle and I could place down some trees. Eventually when I start using some mods, I will, end up using Anarchy and be able to get really close with some of the trees that fit around here. But for now, it's not going to look very nice. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to get my alleyway and I'm just going to drag it super close. What I do like about City Skylines 2 is the roads. Oh, okay, didn't do it. Take that back. What I was going to say is that the roads are a little bit more flexible, which is also true. Yeah, I kind of like that. And it's safe to say that this is going to be very problematic down the track, so we'll just make the decision to get rid of that. And I'm going to leave that crazy intersection for now, and I'm going to go down here and just change a couple of things because I don't think crosswalks on that section really makes a huge amount of sense when we've got some areas like that down here. And again, this is a little lane, so we don't really need people crossing over a busy road, so we'll just change that, and we'll keep that guy like that. And we'll get rid of this and we'll remove these little guys because that is now going to be a playground. Yeah, pretty basic, but she'll do. And I reckon we're going to get a whole bunch of, yeah, look, we've already got a whole bunch of students coming into our little school. So I'm just going to upgrade him. And you know what? It looks kind of nice up there, just overlooking the city. I think that'll be a pretty nice little spot for a primary school. What I am going to do though is I think we probably need a bit of parking. And I think just to complete the education within the city, we also need to place down a high school. Now, this is going to be a little bit more challenging because this is way larger. It's almost double the size. And I also kind of want to place it close to the city, but then also not too close because it sort of feels like the type of high school that would be not too close to the downtown of a city like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place it, I think, on the same boulevard. Yeah, Briarwood. This would be a good spot for it because, again, this grid is a little imperfect and I don't really know what else I'd be building on this area. Oh, and again, just not enough space. That's a little annoying. Oh, and it would have been so nice if that was just going to lead straight up into that road and into this pathway, but it doesn't. Maybe I will make some changes, or do I bother? Do I bother? I think I'm gonna bother. Trees will do for now, and I actually just think that this is going to be probably this size for quite some time. I doubt I'm going to be adding anything quite like a sports field, which is a bit of a shame because I actually think that it's a little bit lackluster, but look, it's fine. We can upgrade it with a couple of different wings, which apparently I can't add on. I don't know why, but whatever. I do like the fact that we do align this up. I think that's going to be quite lovely. Well, not going to be quite lovely. It is quite lovely. And everything else looking pretty sweet. Except for that. That's not sweet. You know what? I'll let in a police station just for good measure, but I reckon I'll probably change where it sits. I don't love it. But everything else, we are just getting by. You know, we are somehow making a lot of money. I kind of wish this game was a bit harder because making money is a piece of cake at the moment. I do have to admit though, I am not really paying for a lot of services. We have nothing in terms of garbage management or water, and we are just relying on outside connections for power as well. So I think that once we start placing out a couple of these things and, you know, also train stations and other services that are, you know, pretty expensive, then we will probably be losing a little bit of money. At least, I'm gonna be honest, I kind of hope so. But I tell you what, New Dynasburg is really starting to progress. This is a lot larger than the last version of this, and we are only up to episode 2. We actually made a lot of progress in today's episode. Let's have a little look at the changes. Hey friends, thank you so much for watching today's episode. I very much appreciate it. In the next one, I reckon we get out of the city. We just leave this place and we just get into the countryside, get some fresh air, just visit on a little place somewhere in the countryside. Yeah, you get what I'm getting at? It's gonna be fun. But anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching, and a big cheers to some of the members over on Patreon supporting the channel: Edward Kim, Noah Weber, Zenage, Ken Comer, Christopher Wren, Damon Cooper, Nick Serafleen, Ferg, Patrick Landolt, Charlie Zane, and Renardinho. Cheers, guys. See you all in the next one.